Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and we are here at video 3 of this series where I am grading each of the players of every team from the 2022-3 NFL Draft. In this video, I will be going over the AFC and the NFC East. At the end, I will say which division I think did better overall, just for the funsies. But let's just get right into this. If you like the content, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribers are always welcome as well. Let's start off with Buffalo in this episode. They had 6 picks in this draft. Started off by moving up a little ways to take Dalton Kincaid at tight end. I usually would not have given an A+ if a team spent some capital to move up. I'm not sure what the reason for the decision. I don't know if it was an oversight or what, but I do absolutely love this move from Buffalo, and I know not everybody does. But look, Dawson Knox seemed to have hit his ceiling about 2 years ago. It hasn't gotten really too much better. He's a fine tight end. There isn't a whole lot of depth behind him, and you needed weapons on this offense to help make things easier for Stephon Diggs and to just help everything flow better. And that's what Dalton Kincaid is. He's not going to be sitting there blocking for you. He is a weapon in the receiving game, and a good one at that. So I love the pick. You also jumped up and prevented the possibility of Kansas City jumping up, which is something that I had done with them, to get Dalton Kincaid as the closest thing to a one-for-one replacement to Travis Kelce that is possibly out there. So I think this is a good move all for all, and if nothing else, blocks one of your primary AFC opponents that gets in the way of getting to a Super Bowl from getting a potential their guy. So great pick. And then with the second pick here near the second end of the second round, you get the offensive guard O'Cyrus Torrence. A+ pick there. When I mocked O'Cyrus Torrence to the Bills in my 1.0 mock draft, I said that the Bills need help in the interior of their offensive line, and my number 1 ranked guard seems like an excellent fit for them. There are concerns with O'Cyrus, but the hope would be that he'll make the running game flow better while anchoring hard on the interior of this line, keeping the pocket open for Josh to step into those deep throws on, hopefully not throw picks. Hopefully not injure his hand. Great start to the draft for the Buffalo Bills. Then we have in the third round Dorian Williams, long arms. He can go sideline to sideline. Good pick, good value. Nothing wrong with that. Then you jump over to the fifth round. Wide receiver Justin Shorter, gave that a D+ for that pick. I did actually like him a fair bit at the combine. I thought he looked pretty good. And he was right up there with Jonathan Mingo in terms of my mass-adjusted prospect scores. So I think that there are really a lot of things to get excited about with this pick. He was lower on my draft board than this. Then in the 7th round, I think really came back strong to finish this draft up for the Buffalo Bills with this offensive guard, cornerback pick. Both of them I have as really good developmental prospects that could have gone as early as the 5th round. So, here in the 7th round to get high-end developmental prospects is absolutely great. When all is said and done, I gave this grade to the Bills. It's a small A. I think that is a normal minus, so just a small A-. Would have liked to see them get another running back there, maybe a power running back. But, if there's one position to find somebody in undrafted free agency, it would be the running back position. So nothing wrong with this draft. Like it quite a bit for the Bills. Next up for the AFC is the Miami Dolphins, and gave them a C- here. In part, that just begins with they only had 4 picks in this draft. We've seen other teams take a low amount of draft capital, not having a first rounder, even not having a first or a second rounder, and make more of it. The Dolphins aren't necessarily in a position where they need to turn these 4 draft picks into 10, 12 draft picks somehow. That's not really a situation they're in. They just had 2 primary needs coming into this draft: offensive line and tight end. And they apparently did help in both here with the 6th and 7th round picks. Wide receiver Elijah Higgins, which I gave a B on. Apparently they're going to be converting him into a tight end. That's not a short-term fix to a problem that needs a short-term fix. Plus, last season they didn't really play Mike Gesicki because he was a receiving tight end, didn't fit their system. Apparently, Elijah Higgins, receiver, going over to tight end is supposed to fit your system. I don't know about that. I don't love it, but at least you addressed the tight end here, apparently. Then offensive tackle, Ryan Hayes. I do think that was a really good pick here at the end of the 7th round, mid-7th round. B plus, A minus on that. I like the prospect, thought it was a good value, and it was at a position of need. Just should have been addressed earlier. Here's where I think this was a failure of design, I guess, from the Miami Dolphins. I think almost surely the 2nd round pick, they should have come in saying, basically, no matter who falls to us, we're going to trade down from here and get, some more 3rd and 4th round capital, because what could happen is if some amazing prospect that we absolutely love drops into the 3rd round, there's no way we can really get back into this draft without really giving up too much future capital until our 6th round pick. And so I don't love this approach. I love the players, though, quite a bit here overall. Cam Smith, I thought, could go as early as the 1st pick in the 2nd round to Pittsburgh. Of course, Joey Porter Jr. was still available, so there was no need to go that route. And then Devin Achane, he's my 3rd best running back in this draft. You're getting him a full, 2.5 rounds after 2 rounds, 9 picks since the last running back was taken. It's amazing. A plus, love the talent, love the fit. And there was some need at running back for the Dolphins, but it just wasn't one of these primary 2 needs. Now, going back to this 1st pick, even if you don't trade back from there and, let's just start out with who was available on the board at these positions of need. Osiris Torrance, Tucker Kraft, both available. Could have gone one of those routes. Would have been a great choice. Let's pretend like you just don't think the value's there for him. Obviously, you love Cam Smith in order for you to go and take him, and I don't blame them. Think he did fall a little ways. Well, just trade back and make the value work. That's, I think, what the best of these teams do sometimes is they force the value to meet the needs. And you can do that in these drafts. And I just think that this was a mistake despite getting a really good player. I could not give Miami a D or anything like that because I think they have 2 immediate contributors, one, I think, quite potentially a future starter. Ryan Hayes has that upside in this draft. You get 3 players out of a draft, 3 starters, you're doing good. So it's rough. I think that Miami failed in terms of execution. I think they failed in terms of strategy here and in terms of meeting their immediate needs. However, they did absolutely succeed in terms of getting good talent when they were up on the board. So couldn't go lower than the grade I gave them. C minus. It was rough. It was probably never going to be a great grade on this draft, starting where they did, having such little capital in it. Then we have the Patriots coming in next and having a pretty Patriots draft. They had 12 picks in the draft, so we're starting off well there. And at the end of the day here, I gave them a high but small B. So take that for what it is. That represents how I felt about it. It's a high B, but it's kind of, I'm barely at a B still. It's a little bit, contradictory maybe, but I do like a lot of the players in this draft all in all. So here's the thing why I couldn't go to like a B minus. They really did address their needs quite well overall. We're going to start off with the wide receiver position where they addressed the needs the least. And they got 2 wide receivers in the 6th round, but I really do like the receivers that they got in the 6th round and thought they were pretty darn good value at that point, which was a position that you could find value in, and you knew that you were going to be able to find some value at the wide receiver position coming into this draft. So a smart draft strategy, not overdrafting wide receivers. First of all, you start off with Kayshon Boutte at the 10th pick in the 6th round. A grade there. He is a guy who could be out of the league as soon as next year. He could be out of the league in no time, or he could be a star. He could be a wide receiver 1. And some people didn't think he would get drafted because they thought maybe those off-field concerns would be too much for teams. But here we go in New England, a franchise that's really known for their system, their culture. If he, this could be a good fit for Kayshon Boutte if he takes to that culture. Then you have wide receiver Demario Douglas, just 2 picks after Kayshon Boutte, gave that an A-, just because there was a similar wide receiver that I had ranked a little bit higher than him. But all in all, good value, love the pick. And this is what I had to write about him, is I said that he was a very shifty, little possession receiver who plays fierce to create yak. He has excellent ball concentration, and he can contribute on special teams. And that's where he's going to find if he finds a spot on the roster year one here, isn't a practice squad guy, it's going to be those special teams abilities that are going to get him there. He does have some work to do with his route running. He's had trouble creating any kind of separation with his routes. I still really like the tape on him overall quite a bit. And there are also size concerns for Demario Douglas, but you can overcome size concerns with at the size that he's at. It's not so small that there's no chance he'll ever make it in the NFL. There's definitely an opportunity for him, and I love it. Then you have the offensive line, another need for New England. They went and they got center Jake Andrews in the 4th round, Sidy Sow, 5th round, Atonio Mafi, not Antonio, Atonio, and Sidy Sow, Atonio Mafi, we'll say Atonio Mafi was a near my guy. Sidy Sow was a very interesting prospect that I thought about putting him. He might have made my notable. He might have been a near my guy, but he has a very interesting physical profile. There were just too many technical issues, I suppose, that caused him to fall a little bit on my chart compared to where he got drafted. Thought both of them a little bit overdrafted, but also really interesting prospects and at a position of need. Then center Jake Andrews, same thing, just fell, taken a little bit too early compared to my board, but I think he's a solid prospect, area of need there. And so you're seeing the areas of need, New England is hitting them with multiple times, playing a numbers game to extent. And then the third need that I had written for New England coming into this was their cornerback position, and right off the bat, they get Christian Gonzalez at pick 17. So they not only trade back and acquire a little capital from pick 15, but they also get Christian Gonzalez. A+ for that pick. And I actually did mock Christian Gonzalez to New England in my 1.0 mock draft. And what I said at that point in time, I'm sure that New England would be happy to trade down, but at this point in the draft, I think that teams are pretty happy to see just who falls to them. And that was mostly accurate around this point in the draft. However, they were able to fall back just a couple of spots in a trade in the real draft. And then I went on to say that in the end, I think that New England would be absolutely ecstatic to have a shot at getting a lockdown corner, a potential lockdown corner in the ultra-natural, athletic, and instinctual player, Christian Gonzalez. So, obviously, just love that pick for them. And a little bit of a ring-the-bell moment for me, if you want to say. In the 2nd round, I did have them taking an edge rusher in that same draft. I had them going Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who was not available in the real draft at this point, taken at the end of the 1st by Kansas City. Keon White, not a terrible second option here. A bit of a boom or bust prospect to him. I think there's a fair amount of that in this New England draft, but a lot of upside, older prospect. Not everybody saw it, but I liked the tape on him pretty fairly. Then you have linebacker Marte Mapu. Same thing as Jake Andrews, Sidy Sow, Atonio Mafi. Very, very interesting prospect profile. Just a little bit early for me. Took a kicker, don't like that. Took a punter here in the 6th round, don't love it, whatever. At least they had a lot of picks. And yeah, that's the New England draft. Let's move on to the New York Jets. So the New York Jets come away with your standard 7 picks, a little bit of a capital deficit, not having a 3rd round pick to 6th. But I don't think that this draft started off going to plan with Broderick Jones getting taken right in front of them. And I just... This draft grade here, little b, big minus, is not all their fault. However, they didn't get aggressive enough to ensure that they would get a top offensive lineman, which I think was an absolute, pretty much a necessity that they needed to do here with this first pick. So I don't love the first pick in Will McDonald, the 4th, largely in part because of that, also in part because I thought it was too early. and there were other edge rushers I would have taken in front of him, but I like the player just fine. Back to this not being entirely the New York Jets' fault, you also create your own non-misfortune by thinking about these things, that a team's going to know that you probably are going to take Broderick Jones, so they might be trying to jump ahead of you. Be proactive, and the Jets just didn't do that. But in the end, I do think that they did a decent job here of making up for it and got some good players and had a pretty solid draft. I was a little surprised with the second pick that the Jets did not take JMS, John Michael Schmitz, over Joe Tippmann. However, I also understand this pick. So I gave it a B+, liked the pick just fine, nothing wrong with it, and it met a very much so a need here for the Jets and doing what we think that they should do here. So with Joe Tippmann, you are going to get a guy who can help to block for Breece Hall downfield a little bit better once Breece Hall comes back and is fully healthy, and I bring that up for a couple of picks for now. Next up, in the 4th round, you get offensive tackle Carter Warren. Love it. It was a necessity, and I think it was a very good pick. He is the right type of guy as far as value and talent goes. He excels in pass protection, and I felt that he could come right in and be an excellent swing tackle on day one. That's what I wrote about him, which is exactly what they need if they're not going to get a guy who can actually come in and just totally improve, almost surely improve this offensive line. But there is a risk here with Carter Warren, and that is that he is recovering from a meniscus tear. So hopefully the Jets did the appropriate homework here. I don't know where that injury is as far as recovery goes, and if he is not, if there's an injury week 5, week 6, and he's not ready by that point, then I would actually knock this overall grade down a little bit. Next up, we have Israel Abanikanda, a guy that I said he has X Factor written all over him in one of the things that I wrote about him in my write-up. Absolutely love the pick. There were some guys I would have gone in front of him. However, it's not like I wrote, this guy has X Factor written all over him for some of those guys ahead of him. So this could be a nasty, nasty steal and awesome pick. And I also really like it from the aspect that he should provide them with the extra juice in that running back group that hopefully they're not going to have to rush Breece Hall back, and they'll feel more comfortable waiting until he's fully healed, ready to go, and not at any kind of risk of creating further injuries and just derailing his career. So really, really do like that pick. And then we're going to jump to the 7th round right here in tight end Zach Kuntz, a guy who I thought could have gone in the 5th round, roughly. Love the pick. A+ on there. Catch the falling tight end. Tight end wasn't necessarily a need, but he is also another receiving weapon. He's not really an inline tight end at all. He's a flex tight end. So great on all levels. Like I said, a little B, big minus. They did not do a bad job of drafting out of the guys that I had on my draft board. As far as these 2 6th round picks, I had other options available on my draft board that I would have gone, but now we're going to move over to the NFC East, starting off with the Dallas Cowboys. They had 8 picks in this draft. It was a borderline B, a possible B-, a probable B+, and in the end, especially with those 8 picks, I felt that their draft firmly landed in this B+ territory. Right off the bat, they took Mazi Smith with their first pick of the draft, defensive tackle, A+, absolutely love it. We're addressing an area of need, interior defensive line, an area where I believe maybe it's my 3.0. I didn't win 4 rounds. I think I took a linebacker, a guy who could play along the edge, and a bigger man in the middle or something like that for them. Took 3 guys in the front 7, and so I really do love the strategy here by Dallas. I think they were doing what they should do in this draft, and Mazi Smith is an excellent, excellent start to that. I love him. I think he could have gone earlier in this draft, and the return on the value would have been just perfectly fine. Then with the second pick of the draft, they kind of lost me here. C- Luke, I think it's Schoonmaker. I've always said Schoonmaker, but I've heard Schoonmaker as of late. So this is a very Dallas tight end, but this was way too early for him, and I think there were some other guys that I would have taken over him. But regardless, this was too early for Luke Schoonmaker. Then in the 3rd round, you get linebacker DeMarvion Overshown. A on that. Thought good value, place of need for them, and I think a little bit of a boomer bust prospect. Maybe there's a lot of good tools. Though I liked him as a prospect. Then in the 4th round, Edge Fiumi Fihoko, B+ on that one. Then when we get to the 5th round, they did something that I also thought that I would want to do if I was Dallas, and get a guy in the trenches on the offensive line. Offensive tackle Asim Richards was a really, really solid pick at that point in the draft. Great value, good player, like it a lot, and I think that the strategy is sound. The Cowboys kind of got thin on offensive line after that being a strength for a long time, so bring another guy in there to add to that depth. Then in the 6th round, don't love that pick. And then we come to the other 6th round pick and running back, Deuce Vaughn. Gave that an A+. Absolutely love the guy. If he hits, he could absolutely be something very, very special. His tape is pretty sweet to watch. I do want to say that I had to check the running backs in this draft, because I did have running back as a need for Dallas. I just felt like they needed a power running back. I looked at the roster after the draft. That's my only issue here is I think they needed to bring in the Thunder for the Lightning that is Tony Pollard. But here we've got some additional Lightning in Deuce Vaughn, but God, I do love him. And then in the 7th round, wide receiver Jalen Brooks. I think that's good, sound strategy to bring in another wide receiver into this room. I think I had him as a 7th round value, so fine pick there. Other guys I would have gone with, though, over him. This draft class for Dallas, it's not a wow class, which a lot of them are, or maybe every other one of them is, but I felt that the Cowboys really addressed their needs nicely, and they got some really solid depth pieces in important areas where they need to continue to bring in depth, so that way when some of their other players aren't there anymore, they're not going to lose, miss a beat in some areas where they are currently strengths for them. So good, solid draft, and additionally, they did do a pretty solid job with some of the undrafted free agents that they brought in. Liked that class for them, so looking solid. Then the New York Giants had their draft, and they absolutely killed it with their first 3 of 7 picks here, starting off with Deonte Banks, John Michael Schmitz, cornerback, center, both A+ really here. I felt that they got both of these guys kind of at the back end of where their draft range. So they got the best value within, the proper range that these guys should have been drafted within. So that's really, really good, and areas of need for them as well. Then with their 3rd pick, they get Jalen Hyatt here in the 3rd round, A+ there. This is the type of wide receiver that I thought they needed to bring into this room, a guy that can help open up the field because of his straight line speed. And that is Jalen Hyatt. There is yet to be seen if he can be a true X wide receiver out on the perimeter, but I kind of don't care. Just put him out on the perimeter and send him straight ahead, because you have this litany of wide receivers who are really effective in the short and intermediate range that you just need to open up the field for them to be effective. And that's what Jalen Hyatt can do. So great value here too at the early 3rd round for Jalen Hyatt. A+ start to this draft for the New York Giants. Then in the 5th round, you get Eric Gray, and there is a lot to like about him. Outside of breakaway speed, he's a pretty darn complete back. So solid pick there in the 5th round. And then jumping over down to the 7th round here in safety, Gervarius Owens, gave that a B+, and just is partially because of my draft board. I kind of like this even more. As far as Gervarius Owens goes, he was the 8th on my mass-adjusted prospect score for safeties, pretty solid, and he was one of only 2 true free safeties in this entire draft class, well, of the guys on my draft board at least, and I didn't like the other one. He has good ball skills, he plays with hustle, he's a downhill disruptor with good pursuit and good closing speed, he's good in both man and zone coverage. And so if you were looking for a free safety, I understand maybe, jumping over some of those other safeties that I had higher in this draft class than him, that I would have, in a vacuum, taken over him. Probably found a solid pick here at the end of the 7th round in a guy who very well might be a great depth piece and maybe become a starter someday. In the end, I gave the New York Giants a big A-. Not a small minus, just a big A-. Regular, normal minus. I'm not sure that New York Giants fans could have asked for a much better draft than this, especially for those first 3 picks. There were defensive tackles and cornerbacks, talking about these 6th round pick, the first 7th round pick there, and Jordan Riley, Trey Hawkins prior to that, I had on my board that I thought were pretty good. So we're just going to kind of give the Giants the benefit of the doubt on those 2 picks. The only real nitpick that I had, what prevented me from going A, maybe in towards A plus territory, is that they didn't get a linebacker in this draft. Given the linebackers in this draft and who they got with those first 3 picks and when the good linebackers went in this draft, I understand that though. So not a huge knock on them. Very, very good draft for the New York Giants. Now we can catch up a little bit on timing here because the Philadelphia Eagles just absolutely knocked it out of the park. You look over there, the worst grade I seem to have is on the 6th round draft pick quarterback Tanner McKee with an A-/A+. So basically the worst grade they got was an A. And a lot of Jalen Carter, I think Tyler Steen, and definitely Sidney Brown all would be A+s if they hadn't spent some capital to move up to get those picks. So I freaking love this draft. Tanner McKee, why is it an A-/A+? One of those cases where, on the surface, Tanner McKee is the exact opposite as Jalen Hurts. He's nowhere near the same guy. But I think what we did here, first of all, great value, I thought, for Tanner McKee. He's one of the guys who I thought had the highest developmental upside, in part just because of his age. He was really one of the only quarterbacks that was decently young at like 21, 22, I think is 22 years old. Also, I think what Philadelphia did here was they took a page out of the classic Green Bay Packers playbook. They used to do this all the time, less so nowadays, and that was to draft these 5th, 6th, 7th round quarterbacks fairly often, and then you develop them for 2 to 3 years, showcase them, and then you trade them away to a team for a 4th round pick or something in the future. So it's just an investment in future capital at that point in the 6th round. Probably felt that he was worth it. And also, maybe you get a really good backup quarterback, and or maybe you get, you could get a guy who you could trade away for even more capital than a 4th rounder, or maybe you get a guy who is your future starter if, God forbid, Jalen Hurts gets hurt or something like that. But, Jalen Carter could be the best pick of this draft. Nolan Smith absolutely fell. Thought he was a top 12 could go top 12, didn't have to. But I thought he could have gone top 12, A+ there. Tyler Steen, pretty much a my guy. I think an almost my guy on the offensive line there. A+ type of prospect. Love him. Sidney Brown, my favorite, probably my favorite player of this draft. And give that an A+, traded up to get him. Keely Ringo, he fell too far there. That's a really, really good value. I think they traded up to get him, and I still give it an A/A+, just because of how good the value was there. And as far as Keely Ringo goes, he's kind of a straight line speed guy. He doesn't really have a whole lot of wiggle. That's the biggest concern there for him. And then you jump to the last pick of the draft, and you have my guy in Moro Ojamo, who I thought could go much, much earlier in this draft. A++ for that. By this point in the draft, literally everybody is saying, what the heck's happening? How has he fallen this far? So probably some medical concerns, but absolutely fantastic draft by the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's move on to the Washington Commanders draft to wrap up these AFC and NFC East. They had 7 picks in this draft, and it's a B- for me, but there is a chance that this draft is an A. If Emmanuel Sanders lives up to his draft capital here, if he's better than I think he will be, there's a really good chance that pick 2, Jartavius Martin, pick 3, Ricky Stromberg, Braden Daniels, pick 5 there, KJ Henry, there's a chance that all 5 of those could be starters for this team. And 6, Chris Rodriguez Jr. in the 6th round, could be a really solid contributor / backup running back on this roster as well. So let's start off with their first pick, cornerback Emmanuel Forbes. I had him more as a 2nd to 3rd round guy because I just felt that there's too much risk of him failing, being a bust. But there is also an enormous upside with him, and I really do like the fit here. Went to the Washington Commanders, a team that runs a lot of zone, the classic Fangio defense, and so I think that's where Emmanuel Forbes has the highest chance of success. So I love that in that regard, but I just would have gone with other options and whatnot. not my flavor. But at least he also fits a need. Then at pick in the second round, Jartavius Martin was an absolute my guy. I didn't think he would go this early in the draft. Love to see it. Just by my board, it was a B+, but in my heart, it's an A+. Love him. Then Ricky Stromberg, another my guy at center. Taken probably too early. Another thing with my board here is why he gets a C grade. But new centers would be, there would be, teams reaching for centers in this class because there was a scarcity at that position. Then at the fourth round, O-lineman Braden Daniels, thought he fell in this draft. I think I had like a second, third round grade on him, maybe third, fourth, third round straight up. But A pick right there, loved it. KJ Henry, like I said, another guy who I think could become a starter. Very solid pick, and got good value for him, A-. I think there was just a different option that I would have gone at the edge position, but nothing wrong with that. Running back Chris Rodriguez Jr., like him enough. B+ grade on it. There were other running backs I would have gone with over him. Nothing wrong with it. And then don't really care for the last pick here in edge, Andre Jones. D+ there, though, so there was something that I did like and or understand about that pick. Now, here's my only issues with this draft. Why, even though they have a bunch of my guys, and I think they could end up with 5 starters, 6 contributors out of this very easily, is that I think that there was a lot of needs here for Washington, and there were 3 big needs that they didn't really address. And I thought there were ways that they could do that without probably losing too much on, out of the guys that they got. First of all, you could have parlayed that Ricky Stromberg pick into a 4th and a 6th rounder, I bet, and then that would have helped to address some of these needs. So I think I said it, quarterback, linebacker, tight end are the 3 needs that I really saw. And here's what, you very easily, literally could have done here. You flip pick the 16th pick in the 6th round, flip that for a later 6th round and another 7th round pick, and you probably, almost certainly could have then gotten Max Duggan, Zach Kuntz, and D. Winters down the stretch of this draft. And then we were really cooking. Despite that first round pick, we're in the B+ A- territory for me. Probably would have given them A- if that's how they ended this draft instead of these 2 picks. But solid draft. And in the end here, between the battle between AFC East and the NFC East, which division did I think had a better collective draft here? But based on the grades, the NFC comes up with a big landslide victory. This is the first NFC divisional matchup victory. So look forward to the AFC and NFC West, because there we will see who wins the battle of the divisions. It could be a 2-2 tie or a 3-1 landslide victory for the AFC. There starts to go my voice. So thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate it. Check out the West, check out the North and South videos are already out there. And I will see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.